We could even potentially finish it in like one stream, but I don't think I'm going to read 15 pages tonight and then 15 pages next week. So probably two more book clubs until we finish Red Mars. It's the book that never ends. So Peter Claiborne, son of Anne Claiborne, has survived, confirmed. Holy shit. He's probably in the Southern Colony as well, but we'll see. Hopefully they didn't kill him and eat him as a cult sacrifice right before Anne gets there. That would be the ultimate irony. Do the next stream on Groundhog's Day and start reading from chapter 1. That's terrifying. That actually scared me a little bit to think about. I've been reading this book for over a year, or about a year. Just literally never ending. Holy shit. And Roberts Dion, thank you for gifting a sub to our esteemed book club committee member, Roar. Onward, friends. Yes, Kim is a very ambiguous name. It is a man, I believe. Some mistakes you can never make good. Anne Claiborne sat in the back of Michelle's Rover, sprawled across 3 seats, feeling the wheels rise and fall over the rocks. Last I checked, that is how they identified. Started in November 2023. Holy shit. Over a year. I don't know whether to be ashamed or very proud of myself. It is fucking hard to read a book this thick for that long live on Twitch. I'm a little proud. I'm a little proud of it. I do wish I'd read it a little faster, but also, like I said, if I read too fast, chat gets confused. In fact, I get confused. I like to have like natural... Now I have something in my eye. Oh my god. We're really milking this. Jesus. Like 2 of my eyelashes just decided to launch out of my eye and out of my eyelid and into my eyeball in an effort to waste time and make this take 2 years to read. No, what was I even fucking saying? I forgot. I'm proud of myself. Oh, I would, like I said, if I read too fast, chat gets confused, and then I was like, okay, that's kind of a joke, but also not really, because I like to do it in, break it down, you know? I have found that, like, if too much happens, it's hard for even me to remember, like, when I try to do the summary next week. So I have really, this is just taking so long, because it's, like, reading it in, like, 15-page segments. It's, like, 668 pages. And we are on 632. Everyone dies from the sex. I think that might happen. Tragically, Peter will be lost again. Thank you, Water Tiger. And thank you, everybody. Anne Claiborne sat in the back of Michelle's Rover, sprawled across 3 seats, feeling the wheels rise and fall over the rocks. Her mistake had been in coming to Mars in the first place, and then falling in love with it. Falling in love with a place everyone else wanted to destroy. Outside this rover, the planet was being changed forever. Inside, the main room was lit by floor-level windows, which gave a snake's eye view out under the skirt of the rover's stone roof. Rough gravel road, scattered rockfall in the way. They were on the Noctis Highway, but a lot of rock had fallen onto it. Michelle wasn't bothering to drive around the smaller samples. They rolled along at about 60 kilometers per hour. And when they hit a big one, they all jounced in their seats. "Sorry," Michelle said. "We have to get out of the chandelier as soon as possible." The chandelier? Noctis labyrinthus. The original name, Anne knew, given to it by the Terran geologists staring at Mariner photos. But she didn't speak. The will for speech had left her. Michelle talked on, his voice low and conversational, reassuring. "There's several places where if the road were cut, it would be impossible to get the cars down. Transverse scarps that run from wall to wall, giant boulder fields, that kind of thing. Once we get into Marineris, we'll be okay. There's all kinds of cross-country routes there." But also he has a French accent that I can't do. "Are these cars supplied for a drive down the whole canyon?" Sachs asked. "No, we've got caches all over the place, though." Apparently, the Great Canyons had been some of the principal transport corridors for the hidden colony. When the official Canyon Highway was built, it had caused them problems, cutting off a lot of their routes. From her corner, Anne listened to Michelle as attentively as the rest. She couldn't help being curious about the hidden colony. Their use of the canyons was ingenious. Rovers designed to stay down in them were disguised to look like one of the millions of boulders that lay in great talus piles sloping out from the cliffs. The roofs of the cars actually were boulders, hollowed out from below. Heavy insulation kept the rock roof of the car from heating up, so there was no infrared signal. Especially since there's still any number of Sachs's windmills scattered around down here, and they confuse the picture. The rover was insulated on its underside as well, so that it left no snail's track of heat to reveal its passing. The heat from the hydrazine motor was used to warm the living quarters, and any excess was directed into coils for later use. If they built up too much while moving, the coils were dropped into holes dug under the car and buried with regolith mixed with liquid oxygen. By the time the ground over the coil warmed up, the rover was long gone. So they left no heat signal, never used the radio, and moved only at night. During the day, they sat in place among the other boulders. And even if they compared daily photos and saw that we were new in the area, We would just be one of the 1,000 new boulders that had fallen off the cliffs that night. Mass wasting has really accelerated since you started the terraforming, because it's freezing and thawing every day. In the mornings and evenings, there's something coming down every few minutes. So there's no way they can see us, Sachs said, sounding surprised. That's right. No visual signal, no electronic signal, no heat signal. A stealth rover, Frank said over the intercom from the other car, and laughed in his harsh bray. That's right. The real danger down here is the very rockfall that's hiding us. A red light on the dash went off, and Michelle laughed. We're going so well, we'll have to stop and bury a coil. Won't it take a while to dig a hole? Sachs asked. Sachs said, won't it take a while to dig a hole? There's one already dug if we can get to it. Another 4 kilometers. I think we'll make it. You have quite a system here. Well, we've been living underground for 14 years now. 14 Martian years, I mean. Thermal disposal engineering is a big thing for us. But how do you do it for your permanent habitat? How do you do it for your permanent habitats, assuming you have any? We pipe it down into the deep regolith and melt ice for our water. Or else we pipe it out to vents, disguised as your little windmill heaters, among other methods. Those were a bad idea, Sachs said. From the next car, Frank laughed at him. Only 30 years late with that realization, Anne would have said if she were speaking. But no, an excellent idea, Michelle said. They must have added millions of kilocalories to the atmosphere by now. About an hour from any of the moholes, Sachs said primly. He and Michelle began to discuss the terraforming projects. Anne let their voices drift into glossolalia. It was amazingly easy. Conversations these days were always right on the edge of meaninglessness for her. She had to exert herself to understand, rather than the reverse. She relaxed away from them and felt Mars bounce and jumble under her. They stopped briefly to bury a heating coil. The road got smoother when they started again. They were deep into the labyrinth now. And in a normal rover, she would have been looking through the skylights at tight, steep canyon walls. Rift valleys, enlarged by slumping. There had been ice in this ground once upon a time. Now all migrated down to the Compton Aquifer, at the bottom of Noctis, presumably. Anne thought of Peter and shuddered helplessly. One couldn't assume things, but the fear gnawed at her. Simon watched her surreptitiously, the worry plain on his face. And suddenly she hated his doggy loyalty, his doggy love. She didn't want anyone to care for her like that. It was an unbearable burden, an imposition. At dawn, they stopped. The two boulder rovers parked at the edge of a patch of similar boulders. Sorry, I need some water. Bury a heating coil. I hardly know where. At dawn, they stopped. The two boulder rovers parked at the edge of a patch of similar boulders. Oh, I thought they were like at dawn they arrived, but no, okay, they don't drive during the day. Got it. They parked next to a patch of similar boulders. I forgot to turn the heat up and I'm cold. Nice. Moonbow. It's called Moonbow. It's all right. All day they sat in one of the cars together, lingering over small rehydrated or microwaved meals, trying to find TV or radio transmissions. There weren't any to speak of, only the occasional burst in a number of languages and encryptions. An ether junkyard, adding up to an incoherent mash. Harsh blasts of static seemed to indicate electromagnetic pulses. But the rover's electronics were hardened, Michel said. He sat in a chair as if meditating. A new calm for Michel Duval, Anne thought. As if he were used to waiting out his days in hiding. His companion, the youth driving the other car, was named Cassie? I don't know. Casey? Kasei. How do you think it's pronounced? Cassie? I kind of want to... I'm feeling Cassie. Cassie. Kissay? Cassie. Cassii. Cascasi. It's like a unique spelling of Cassie. Definitely one of these pronunciations. Okay. I'm gonna go Katse? Casse? Oh, I like Casse. I don't know if I should go for more like a foreign sound or like something people can follow along. Casse. I could go for Casse. Cassai? I think it's Cassai. Part of me wants to just call him Cassie and be done with it, but Cassai. I'll go Cassai. His companion, the youth driving the other car, was named Cassai. I don't know how I feel about it. Cassai is not a name. It is here. Clearly says so. Cassie. All of these sound wrong to me. I just hope they never bring his name up again. It was named Cassai. Casse. Cassii? His voice had a permanent tone of grim betrayal. Oh, sorry, grim disapproval. His voice had a permanent tone of grim disapproval. Well, they deserved it. In the afternoon, Michel showed Sax and Frank where they were. On a topo map, he clicked onto both cars' screens. Their route through Noctis was to run a course southwest to northeast, along one of the biggest canyons of the labyrinth. Emerging from that, it zigzagged eastward, dropping steeply until they were in the big area between Noctis and the heads of Eos and Tithonium chasms. Michel called this area the Compton Break. It was chaotic terrain, and until they had crossed it and gotten down into Eos Chasm. It was chaotic terrain, and until they had crossed it and gotten down into Eos Chasm, Michel would not feel comfortable. For without their surreptitious road, he said, the area was basically impassable. And if they figure we went this way out of Cairo, they may bomb the route. They had traveled nearly 500 kilometers the previous night. Almost the whole length of Noctis. Another good night, and they would be down into Eos. And beyond their complete reliance on a single route. It was a dark day, the air thick with brown fires, the winds high. Yeah, it was a lot more than I thought, 500, and they're like maybe halfway there. It was a dark day, the air thick with brown fires, the winds high. Another dust storm, no doubt about it. Temperatures were plummeting. Sax sniffed at a radio voice. Sax sniffed at a radio voice which claimed the dust storm was going global. Michel, however, was pleased. It meant that they could travel during the day as well. cutting their travel time in half. Oh, we've got 5,000 kilometers to go. Holy shit. Okay. We've got 5,000 kilometers to go, and most of it off-road. It'll be wonderful to be able to travel by day. I haven't done that since the Great Storm. So he and Cassie began driving around the clock, taking shifts of 3 hours at the wheel, followed by a half-hour off. Another day, and they were down the Compton Break and right into tight-walled Eos Chasm, and Michelle relaxed. Eos was the narrowest of all the canyons in the Marineris system, only 25 kilometers wide when it left the Compton Break. Dividing Sinai Planum from Tithania Catina. The canyon was a deep slash between these two plateaus. Its side cliffs, a full 3 kilometers high. A long, narrow giant of a rift. But they only saw the walls in glimpses, through bubbles of open air in the blowing dust. Laurie's one more canyon name from summoning a demon, for real, dude. Feel something building up. The canyon was a deep slash between these two plateaus. They only saw the walls in glimpses through bubbles of open air in the blowing dust. They continued to follow a level but rock-strewn route, making good progress through all of the long, dim day. It was quiet in the car. The radio turned down to decrease the irritation of the static. The camera's views, higher than the windows, were of dust whipping past them, so that it seemed that they hardly moved. Often it looked as if they were slewing sideways. It was hard driving, and Simon and Sachs spelled Michelle and Cassie, following their directions. Anne was still not talking, and they did not ask her to drive. Sachs drove with one eye on his AI screen, which was giving him atmospheric readouts. She could tell from across the car that the AI was indicating that the impact of Phobos was thickening the atmosphere a great deal, projected to as much as a 50 millibar addition, an extraordinary amount. And the newly smashed craters were still outgassing. Sachs noted this change with his owlish satisfaction, oblivious to the death and destruction that came with it. He noticed her glare and said, "Like the Noachian age, I suppose." He nearly added more, but Simon silenced him with a look and changed the subject. In the next car, Maya and Frank passed the hours by calling over and asking Michelle questions about the hidden colony, or discussing with Sachs the physical changes occurring, or speculating about the war. Hashing it all over endlessly, trying to make sense of it, to figure out what had happened. Talking. On Judgment Day, Anne thought, as all the quick and the dead staggered around together, Maya and Frank would still be talking, trying to figure out what had happened, where they had gone wrong. Their third night out, the two cars ran down the lower end of Eos and came to a long lemniscate fin dividing the canyon. They followed the official Trans-Marineris Highway down the South Fork. In the last hour before dawn, they caught sight of some clouds overhead. And the dawn was much lighter than those of the previous days. It was enough to send them to cover, and they stopped in a fall of boulders stacked against the foot of the canyon's south wall, and gathered in the lead car to wait out the day. Every time I read ahead to see if there's a good spot to stop, I always regret it. There is. It was enough to send them to cover, and they stopped in a fall of boulders stacked against the foot of the canyon's wall and gathered in the lead car to wait out the day. Here they had a view out over the broad expanse of Melis Chasma, the biggest canyon of them all. Eos's rock was rough and blackish in comparison to the smooth red floor of Melis. It seemed to Anne possible that the two canyons were made of rock from ancient tectonic plates, once moving past each other, now juxtaposed forever. Nothing gets Anne excited like giant rocks. They sat through a long day, talked out, tense, exhausted, their hair oily and uncombed, their faces grimy with the ubiquitous red fines of a dust storm. Sometimes there were clouds, sometimes haze, sometimes sudden pockets of clarity. In mid-afternoon, without any warning at all, the rover rocked on its shock absorbers. Startled to attention, they jerked up to look at the TVs. The rover's rear camera was pointed back up at Eos, and suddenly Sax tapped the screen, displaying its view. "Frost," he said. "I wonder." The camera showed the frost steam thickening, moving down canyon toward them. The highway was up on a bench above the main floor of Eos's South Fork. And this was lucky, because with a roar that shook the rover, the main floor disappeared, overwhelmed by a low wall of black water and dirty white mush. It was a juggernaut of ice chunks, tumbling rocks, foam, mud, and water, a slurry throwing itself down the middle of the canyon. The roar was like thunder, even inside the car. It was too loud to talk, and the car trembled under them. Below their bench, the canyon floor proper was perhaps 15 kilometers across. The flood filled this whole expanse in a matter of minutes, and promptly began to rise against a long talus slope that ran out from the cliff down canyon from them. The surface of the flood settled as it pooled against this dam, and froze solid as they watched. A lumpy, discolored chaos of ice, strangely stilled. Now they could hear themselves shout over the cracks and booms and omnipresent roaring, but there was nothing to say. They only stared out the low windows or at the TVs, stunned. The frost steam coming off the flood's surface lessened to a light fog. But no more than 15 minutes later, the ice lake burst at its lower end, rupturing in a surge of black steaming water that tore the Talus Dam away, with an explosive roar of avalanching rock. The flood poured down canyon again, its leading edge beyond their view. Down the great slope from Eos into Melis Chasma. Now there was a river running down Valles Marineris. A broad, steaming, ice-choked deluge. Deluge. Oops. All right, wait, I can't stop there. All right, I'm going to read a little bit further. There's another, I look for, little spaces in the paragraphs. I can read, two more pages. I'm going to go get a refill.